What is the weirdest phobia that you have? Opening a door that I've never opened before that doesn't have a sign on saying pull or push. I'm sure it's related to just general anxiety, but this specifically always bothers me. I once wanted a Starbucks, but I was near a shop I'd never been in before, and I waited across the road for half an hour trying to look like I was casually waiting for somebody, so I could see somebody else open the door first, and I knew which way it opened. I know exactly how it started too. One day at school, we were waiting for the bell to ring so we could go inside, and we were waiting in front of these double doors that were pretty much always opened, but just happened to be closed this day. As they were always open, I'd never paid any attention to which way they opened. There were about 200 kids behind me all waiting to get in as well, and as soon as the bell rang, I tried pushing the door to go through. It didn't work, so in a panic I pulled it open as hard as I could, but forgot to move out of the way first and smacked myself in the face with it. Now whenever I have to open a door, and I'm uncertain about it, I get flashbacks to 200 kids all laughing at me because I opened a door into my own face. That's really intense. Thanks for sharing. Cup holders in the cinema. I sit with my drink in my hands the whole time because it just freaks me out what could be lurking in the cup holder. I'm thinking it's full of germs, which it probably is, but also bits of detritus like moldy popcorn or old chewing gum. It also bothers me that people may have spit into it, or picked their nose, and wiped it, etc. I actually just had a cold shiver even thinking about it. My friends laugh at me because I won't use the cup holder, but there is just no way I would ever use it. I should add my local cinema has the cup holders with the bottom, and not the ones that are just a ring. Wait till you find out what's on the money you gave to the cashier at the ticket window. That's what my debit card is for. Also has the added bonus of not having to communicate with other real people. Think of all the places that debit card goes. It's just as filthy as money. The thing that grosses me out is gas pump handles. Does anyone actually think they've ever even been wiped down? Automatonophobia. At a surface level, I'm scared of mannequins. However, this includes dolls, animatronics, large displays at movie theaters, Halloween decorations, and the Na'vi from Avatar. My earliest memory is having a screaming meltdown in front of a Spencer's in the mall because they had a giant Frankenstein outside the store. I was maybe 3 to 4 and my mom was like, you sat on the ground and screamed and I had to cover your head to get you to move past it. I've come miles from where I was. I visited a museum yesterday and only had to avoid one of the galleries due to my phobia. Even last year, I wouldn't have been able to go in at all, and I get better as time goes on. I've met a lot of kids with the same phobia, and it makes them feel better to see an adult who also doesn't like the mannequins at Old Navy as well. Driving. I always think road accidents are like in the movies. Cars flying and flipping over, ending in a fiery inferno. All in all, most accidents are scarier than what you see in movies because they're quite uneventful, and because you just go off fucking heck, my insurance's rates are gonna go up, and you have to deal with getting your car repaired and dealing with the other person, which is half the time a decent human being and the other half of the time some imbecile who lose all control in a stressful situation. I'm much more scared by my insurance's rates going up than flipping my car. What tag do I search up on Pornhub for this specific fetish? Yes officer, this comment right here. Dude, every time I'm in a car I have a million different scenarios of how I could die going through my head non-stop. Moths, not insects, but moths. Only freaking moths. I don't know why they are so scary to me, but each time I see even the smallest little one I gotta stay at least 2 meters from it, wailing my arms around to get it away from me. I once heard a story in which there used to be no color in all the world, except for moths and butterflies. The butterflies liked to show it off and brag, but the moths decided to share with the earth, and gave away all their color so everyone could enjoy it. Now they are all drab. So moral of the story, moths are nice and butterflies are relay holes. What a sweet story. Unfortunately the fact that they are nice doesn't help me being scared of them. Hahaha, if a story could fix a phobia, things would be so much easier. Just wanted to inject some positivity. Not sure if this qualifies as a phobia, more of an irrational anxiety, but long distance bus rides on buses with 2 floors. They look too high and unstable on the road. I always worry they're going to fall to the side. And if they go on a bridge, forget it. I hold my breath until the bus makes it safely off the bridge. Also, seeing other people stand too close to balconies. Move back, I'm begging you. Spelling. I live in the world's windiest city and we just got double-decker buses last year. They sway so much in the wind they look like cartoon buses when they go round corners. That's a pretty solid way to check for safe conditions. Does this look like a cartoon? If yes, maybe do something different. Cassidystrophia. It's described as a fear of falling into the sky, but the only time I notice is if I'm in a big open area next to a really tall building, or I'm in a building with a tall ceiling, usually stadiums. Relevant xkcd.com 1115. There is always a relevant xkcd. I find that, paradoxically, the more specific the topic, the more relevant the xkcd usually is. Indeed. Randall Munro has an uncanny eye for teasing out oddly specific situations that a shockingly high proportion of us seem to relate to. Is there a relevant xkcd about how there's always a relevant xkcd? It's a little hard to describe, but wide open spaces, specifically outdoors, like plain runways, meadows with no trees to act as borders. Really, any outdoor space that when I look up into the sky, it feels like there's nothing stopping the literal sky from crushing me. Typing it out, it sounds ridiculous, and I know for a fact that that isn't ever going to happen. But I can still very vividly feel the panic and urgency of using my hands like blinders, staring down at the ground as I quickly walk round to the nearest tree during our school field day. Open spaces is listed as an anxiety trigger for people with agoraphobia. Not super uncommon. Swallowing one of my hairs and having to pull it out of my throat. This isn't going to help, but I used to sing in a death metal band and I had long hair. There wasn't enough time between breaths to pull the hair out of my mouth after headbanging, so oftentimes I'd be singing with a mouthful of hair trying not to gag as it's halfway down my throat. My wife and was watching an Alice in Chains video the other day. I was imagining how bad it would hurt to get their hair caught in the guitar strings. I've had to do that once, and let me tell you it's reasonable to have a phobia of it happening. I'm afraid that there are hair strands in my food, so I eat attentively all the time. I developed, and thankfully eventually got over, the oddest toilet-related fear. Every time I went to the loo, I was afraid that I was really elsewhere and doing my business in my pants, possibly in public. For example, I would be peeing and have to assure myself with touch and sound and smell that indeed I was on the toilet. Not in bed sleeping and dreaming I was on the toilet. Not at work somehow asleep at my desk. Or anywhere else. This lasted maybe 2 years and was quite frustrating and upsetting. When I was young, every time I would happen to wet the bed, I would also be dreaming about using an actual toilet in my dream. I understand this one actually. This is gonna get buried. But holes? Like regular holes? Or the book movie? It's called trypophobia, I think. It's things with holes. Lots of holes. I'm having goosebumps all over my body just thinking about it. I heard about this and thought, well, that's not too bad. Then I googled trypophobia and I totally get it. First rule of using internet: never Google trypophobia. I'm sorry, that sounds terrible. It's things with holes. Lots of holes. So, Swiss cheese, cheese graters, Game of Thrones Season 8. This is super weird, but I have a phobia of the ice cream van. Whenever I hear the music it makes my stomach drop and I get a feeling of existential dread creeping over me. I've felt like this my whole life. My parents told me I used to get woken up from naps by our local ice cream van doing the rounds when I was like 2, crying that something was coming out of the sky to get me. These days I'm not quite as dramatic, but any ice cream van music makes my skin crawl. No idea why I feel like this. My theory is I must have been killed by an ice cream van in a previous life. There is something very creepy about that music. Mannequins, the more realistic the creepier. Ever heard of the uncanny valley? It's a study of human being emotional response to objects that resemble humans. The closer an object gets to perfectly resembling a human being, the more negative emotions people have towards it. Not yet, I'll go research now. I experience this with every Boston Dynamics robotic video I watch. I really think the future doesn't bode well for humanity. Was fine with Boston Dynamics bots until I watched that one episode of Black Mirror. Exactly. The resemblance is eerie. I hate walking up those stairs that have gaps in them. Give me a solid staircase any day. Ever since I was a kid I always freaked out going up them worrying that it'd slip through. See, I always imagined someone slicing my ankles while walking down the stairs. Yours is much more rational. I was always nervous something was going to grab my ankle. I had a fear of lifts as a kid. Then we went to visit one aunt in another city and she had the gap stairs. That's how I got rid of my fear of lifts. I would still take stairs over lift if it's less than 5 floors though. I have bathyphobia, which is the fear of depths. I'm not actually afraid of deep water. I have a specific kind of bathyphobia that applies to hallways. I'm terrified of long empty hallways. My 5-year-old also has bathyphobia. He hates showers. I see the past 5 years have refined your joke skills. I'm afraid of deep water, but it's not so much the ocean as it is swimming pools. I cannot be near a swimming pool when I'm alone, especially indoors. That recent video of the freediver going to the bottom of the world's deepest pool made me cringe. Before someone mentions the phobia of having a duck watch you all the time. The fear that somewhere, somehow, a duck is watching you. Like a duck high on drugs or something, a quackhead. Anatidophobia. Obviously, it's not real. It comes from a Far Side comic. No, it is real, but only because of that comic. Shh. I'm afraid of that duck. I'm afraid of that other duck. I'm afraid of the flock. And all my friends think I should see a quack. But I'm not cool with that. Claiming ducks are all innocent. They're not.